What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to basketball. As the NBA season is starting to come to a close, I figure it's a good time to do some reflecting. In my coaching career, it was always my job to work with the younger guys, and so I always kind of hold a special place in my heart for seeing the development of those guys, and I've made a couple videos this year about grading the NBA rookies this year, and I figure, you know what? It's the end of the season now. Let's do an end of the season rankings. Like, since we've done a beginning, middle, gotta have an end to it, right? Just know that when I'm ranking these guys, this doesn't mean that I think they're gonna be good or bad for the rest of their career. I'm just ranking their rookie seasons. Obviously, any young guy can get better, and I hope they get better. I'm rooting for all these guys. We want to see as much talent in the NBA as possible, but with that being said, make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment. I've responded to every single comment on my YouTube channel up to this point, and I can intend to keep on doing so. But yeah, let's get into the rankings. So yeah, shout out Tier Maker for just like having a place with like all these pictures and everything already preloaded. So shout out those guys. As you can see, these are all the rookies that we're going to be rating. There's actually a bunch more, but I've got those guys in a non-factor category. You guys can at me if you want, if you feel like one of these guys has been like a decent enough contributor to where they deserve some sort of like ranking on here. But I kind of put them in here if I felt that they were like, okay, they weren't a high draft pick and they didn't really contribute. So fair enough. If you were a high draft pick and you still didn't contribute, well, you're going to be rated. Otherwise, these are the other tiers that we're working with. We're working with not enough info, meaning like we just, for whatever reason, aren't able to evaluate these guys. Maybe they got hurt or something like that. Otherwise, we have the standard A through F, and then we have a Wemby class. I have no idea who's going to fall into the Wemby class, but you know what? I felt it was necessary to have one. Now, clearly, these guys are in no particular order at all, so we're just going to go down the list. We're going to start to throw them in the tier list and see what happens from there. But let's start out with Trayce Jackson-Davis. Now, Trayce Jackson-Davis is somebody that I was very skeptical of for most of this season. I try to be open about that. Like, I talk with a lot of NBA scouts, like, pretty frequently, just because, like, I used to kind of work in that industry. I won't go into too much detail, but I'm in contact with a lot of these guys. And when Trayce Jackson-Davis was coming in, I think me and a lot of others were very skeptical of his abilities, especially in terms of like athleticism and drive and things like that. And obviously just ending up on the Golden State Warriors helped him out a bunch this year. I remained pretty skeptical throughout his campaign, and I'm like, I don't think he's that hard to game plan for him. Like, I feel like people could put a stop to what he's doing, but he continued to do it, and I have to give him a lot of credit for that. And so just for the fact that he was able to come in and start as much as he did, I'm going to throw him in the B tier for where he was drafted. Like, was he phenomenal? No, but he came in and was a very good contributing player as one of the last picks in the draft, and that's credit to the Warriors and credit to him, right? So awesome job for Trayce Jackson-Davis. All right, next we have Amen and Ausar Thompson, and these are two guys that I don't want to just pair them together because they're twins, and I'm sure that they hate that, and they're their own players at the end of the day, but they just did have very similar seasons, and it's hard not to talk about them. They were drafted right next to each other, right, and play a similar style of game. I'm going to throw both of these guys in the B tier as well. Don't pay any attention as to where people rank on the B versus A tier. I'm just throwing them in there, and that's where they belong. I love Amen and Ausar Thompson. I think that they are phenomenal cerebral basketball players, 11 out of 10 athleticism. They see the floor well. They don't need the basketball to be good basketball players. Yes, the shooting's not there, but here's the thing, like, and I don't want to hear people be like, oh, well, they can't shoot or whatever. I'm like, if everybody was good at everything, like, we wouldn't have star players, right? So yes, they need to improve on that stuff, but these guys are literally, like, really good at, like, almost every other facet of basketball already outside of shooting. The reason I'm putting them in B tier, though, is obviously they had a hard time cracking rotational minutes at points, and they had a bunch of injuries that kind of plagued their season this year. And honestly, I have a hard time understanding why, especially Ausar Thompson didn't get more minutes, why he wasn't starting. Can't comprehend it. Like, they were starting Killian Hayes instead of him at points, and even towards the end of the season, I just felt like the Pistons were mismanaging their minutes for the most part. But yeah, no, and Amen Thompson, when he started to get consistent minutes, like, we really started to see the production ramp up. So we get a B for both of those guys. Next one on the list is Jaylen Wilson, a guy that kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of people because he wasn't one of the Nets' 2 first-round picks this year, and he arguably had the best season out of all of them. A guy that they just kind of brought up. Was he a two-way? I think he was a two-way. And in essence, he came in and started playing like 15, 16 minutes a game and was playing like really good defense. He was moving the ball, like he was catching and attacking the hoop. He was hitting three-pointers, like, and he had a string of games that actually looked like pretty solid at one point. So I want to give a lot of credit to Jaylen Wilson for coming in and just really carving his own path, it seems, and just being a trailblazer for himself. Where do I want to put him? Because like his effectiveness like wasn't like crazy by any means, but considering where he was drafted, I kind of want to put him in the B tier, but I feel like I need to compare it to actual production as well. So because of that, I'm going to give him a C, but I just want to acknowledge the fact that like him being in a C tier for where he was at is a lot better than you would think. So I'm going to consider C tier as like that could be somebody that wasn't really expected to be solid, but he was solid type of thing. It's not a good or a bad thing. Julian Phillips for my Chicago Bulls, a second-round pick that started to get some minutes towards the end of the season. One of the few second-round picks that I really felt the need to talk about in here. His athleticism is pretty crazy. His feel for the game was improving pretty consistently throughout the season, and his jump shot wasn't horrible. I'm not going to lie, when I watched college film of him, I was like, oh boy. I was like, I'm not really a fan of this guy, and I still don't know how much I like him at the end of the day. Like, I still feel like he just has so much to learn about the game, and hopefully being around enough smart basketball players, like, the Bulls do have that. Like, they do have a lot of, like, very experienced basketball players that he can continue to grow and into this NBA body that he has. But I want to at least throw him kind of in the same place as, like, Jaylen Wilson for the time being. It's like, okay, he was able to come in and contribute despite kind of his draft place and what was expected of him. Bilal Coulibaly for the Washington Wizards. Coulibaly had an interesting season, mostly because he played for the Washington Wizards, and they were just kind of a complete dumpster fire of a team this year. He was one of the few bright spots, and we'll actually wrap Vukacic. Is it Vukacic? Tristan Vukacic. I believe that's how it's said. We'll wrap both of these guys kind of into one little talking point, but Coulibaly was very stable for them, which is good because they had like no stability on this team at all this season. Some of the things you saw out of Coulibaly, really, really good perimeter defense, really good instincts. It seems like he was learning the game really, really fast. The jump shot's a little bit slow, but it wasn't bad right now. He converted at a decent clip, and honestly, like, we take that out of a rookie. There's not a ton to look forward to on a Washington Wizards team at the time, or for this time and place, but Coulibaly at least looks like he's going to be a nice NBA player and could carve himself into a starter role going forward. Where does that mean I'm going to put him? I'll probably throw him in the B tier as well. That's what I would say. Tristan Vukacic. I believe that's how you say it again. Like, I've only really seen a handful of film from him, but I know what he was doing at the end of the season. Like, he was coming in and he was contributing, and I just loved the film that I saw of him. For those of you that don't know, like, pretty end of the draft pick for them. I don't even know if he was drafted. I can't remember. But Vukacic was able to put the ball on the floor. He was able to shoot a little bit, even though, like, the efficiency wasn't quite there. He had a ton of energy. He's blocking shots. I think that there's some real promise for this guy. So, like, I'm throwing him in the C tier as well, but, like, I think you could actually turn this guy into a good rotational player, and if somebody, like, really worked on him and really defined some certain skill points for him, I know I'm going to be talking maybe a little bit crazy for a second, I think you could make a starter out of this guy. I really think you could. Are the Washington Wizards going to be the one to do it? Probably not, in all honesty, but, you know, hopefully he gets the chance to keep on shining in Washington. Derek Lively, the rookie, still standing at this point. Well, he's not standing right now because he got hit in the back of the head, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Derek Lively, I said when he came in, I was like, oh my God, he ended up in the perfect place in Dallas. All Luke has ever wanted is just run, jump, and dunk centers. That's all he asks for at the end of the day. He's like, I don't need anybody else to do anything. I just need a center that can run, jump, and dunk, like when he had DeAndre Jordan when he first got into the league. And Derek Lively has done that, and then some. Even when moving to the bench, when Daniel Gafford came in, he's almost like contributed even more, just because he can just go like bring all that energy that he has. He can defend, he can catch the lobs, and even when he's in like that short pick and roll situation, that short roll, he's showing that he's got playmaking skills too. So like Derek Lively, absolutely A tier player. Phenomenal pickup for them. Dallas has a center, two centers on their team for a long time going forward. Let's talk about Anthony Black now for the Orlando Magic. I like Anthony Black. I feel bad that he got drafted to the Orlando Magic because it doesn't make sense for them to have a player like this guy. Should they keep developing him? Yes, they should. I just wish that he would have gone to a place where, you know, they had like a little bit of like space and things like that for him. I know he hit at like a decent 3-point clip this year. He didn't take many shots, and I do think that you can turn him into somewhat of a shooter. But I worry about his offensive game. Like, I kind of see him as like a less good Josh Giddey because he's a really good defender. He's a really good passer. I worry about his creation ability. I don't think he's like that crafty or anything, but I think he's really smart. So I think you can do something with it. He didn't get the opportunity that maybe he needed in his rookie season. It's so hard to be a rookie point guard. It really is. But there's enough there to make it interesting, and I don't think he had a bad rookie campaign. So I'm just going to throw him in the C tier, which for how high he was picked, kind of sucks, but like, you know what, it could be worse. Grady Dick. Okay, Grady Dick had a kind of interesting season. I don't want you guys, because I know all you Toronto Raptors fans are going to come at me with a lot of recency bias with things. I'm looking at his whole rookie season. Beginning of his rookie season was really, really bad. And yes, he's a rookie. That's fine, right? It's not a big deal. Couldn't play defense, couldn't shoot, right? And you drafted him to be a shooter. So that kind of stunk. Towards the end of the season, you started to see him get a little more confident with his stroke. That's awesome. He's still not very good at like getting to the paint or causing anything else to happen, but that's okay. Like, we want rookies to focus on like one or two things that they can do really well right away, and he started to find those at the end of the season. And so for that reason, I'm gonna give him probably the C tier as well, because was he a big contributing factor the whole season? No. And like there was such a disparity between the first half and the second half. Like the second half, it's like, okay, yeah, this guy, like, yes, he can shoot, we understand that, he's producing now a little bit on offense, but the first half was like really rough. So by the end of the season, give him a C, meet him somewhere in the middle, I'd say. But I'm hopeful about Grady Dick. I think that there's an avenue for him to be an eventual starter on this team, especially with Scotty Barnes on the team. You're going to want lengthy shooters on the team. So yeah, let's hope for Grady Dick's development. Jordan Hawkins now. I love Jordan Hawkins. I think he's a really cool player. I think he's a firework. I just really like his game. He's fearless. He can create his own shot, but he got buried in the Pelicans depth chart because they're a deep team, right? They've got a lot of talented players at the wing that are really, really good, and they can play defense, right? Jordan Hawkins is not the best defender, but man, you throw him out there and he could go get you 20 points probably at any single night. For that factor alone, like, just because he didn't get a huge chance to shine, I'm throwing him in B tier. I think he was that good of a player when he was in there, and I honestly think the fact that he didn't get to play more in the playoffs is a crime in itself. I think they needed his offense, they needed his scoring. I really hope they find a way to get him on the court more this next season. Huge fan of Jordan Hawkins. Keyonte George, I don't know why he doesn't have a transparent background, but, you know, just is what it is, right? Keyonte George was a real surprise for me because he was a guy coming in that I was like, okay, kind of a combo guard. Like, what position is he going to play? I never like combo guards coming into the NBA. Like, I think it's really scary when you come into the NBA and you don't know what like position you can play. And obviously the Jazz did a really, really good job, and I'm not surprised. The Jazz are a really well-run organization. They were like, nope, you're playing point guard. That's what you're going to do. Learn how to play it. And he was a starting point guard for them for most of this season with a back half like lottery, early non-lottery pick. Was he like 15 or something? I think that's where he fell. But we saw shot creation out of him. We saw development in the passing game. Defensively, he needs to grow a little bit, but every rookie's got to grow in something, man. Like, for the production that we saw this year, I thought Keyonte George was really, really effective coming in and playing with some other veteran players on the team. I was really impressed by him, even sharing the floor with other point guards and other twos at the time. So really, really happy with how Keyonte George developed. Where do I think his ceiling is? I don't really know, because like I don't see him as like a super high ceiling guy, but at the same time, like he showed me more in his rookie season than I thought. So I'm going to put him in probably the B tier as well. Yeah, no, I'm going to put him in the B tier for now. I was thinking about him, like, does he belong in A because he was a starter for like most of the season? But I'm going to throw him in B for now. I think that's fair. But yeah, really happy with Keyonte George. All right, next, Jaylen Hood-Schifino. Jaylen Hood-Schifino struggled this year, and let me tell you, it's not easy being drafted onto, like, LeBron's team. Like, at least I can't imagine it is. I don't think I know anybody that's played with LeBron as a rookie. No, pretty sure I haven't. I know quite a few NBA players, like, quite a few, but, like, I don't think I know anybody that's had to do that before, and I can't imagine it's an easy thing. You're trying to compete for a championship. You have a ton, and I mean a ton of really, really smart basketball players on that team that are light years ahead of your knowledge and everything, and you're just trying to keep up with them. So know that every day in practice, he's probably getting absolutely torched, probably getting his ankles broken every day. I'm not even kidding about that. Like, probably what happens every day, probably gets knocked on his ass a ton. And like, it's hard. Like, there's probably moments where you're like, oh man, I thought I was good at basketball or whatever. And I'm trying to preface this a little bit because I'm going to give him kind of a poor ranking just based on where he was drafted and everything. But really was not a very effective player this year. We hope that he can keep on growing. He is young at the end of the day. I'm probably going to put him in the F tier for now. I'm sorry, Jaylen Hood-Schifino. It wasn't a good rookie campaign for you, my guy. I hope the best. I think he can get better. All these guys can get better, right? Like, even like a Derek Lively or whoever falls into the Wemby class. They can all get better. They've all got ways to improve. Just, it wasn't a good season for the kid. Cam Whitmore, man. So this guy had an interesting draft story, and just talking from the people that I know that were involved in the draft process, they're like, look, the reason that this guy fell in the draft is because when people met with him, they're like, okay, this guy doesn't maybe seem like the brightest bulb that it has ever been made, right? If you guys kind of get my drift or whatever, and that's part of the growth with people, right? Is like they need to grow as people as well, and you just need to see some more things. You need to become a more well-rounded person and everything, because like teams care about that stuff. As far as Cam Whitmore on the basketball court, holy shit, is this guy talented. Crazy athlete, crazy strength. Like, the confidence is great for your shooting and everything. Like, when you put him out there and he got some minutes, offensively, he was able to create a ton of things. His downsides, his defense wasn't that great. He was very tenacious at points, but he made a lot of mistakes, and that's kind of just like the up here part of the game, right? He's a really bad passer, though. Like, he's like Rudy Gay level of, like, bad passer. That dude is a black hole, doesn't see anybody that's open, like, ever. Causes some turnovers because of it, but overall, an immense talent, right? And we saw enough good things out of him this season to where, yep, he probably belongs in the B tier as well. So Rockets, great job with your draft and everything. And we had a feeling the Rockets nailed it with their draft and everything, but the Rockets got to make sure they keep putting other smart players around them and everything, and keep building on these guys, because these two are so talented. And Ahmed Thompson's a really smart player, but like, just keep putting the right vets around these guys, and you're gonna have some really good basketball players on your team. Brandon Miller. What was Brandon Miller? The second pick in the draft. I had to think about that for a second. Brandon Miller was awesome, especially given the situation he was in. The Charlotte Hornets, not the easiest organization to thrive in, kind of like Washington. You guys, if you've been on the channel at all, you guys know about my thoughts on those two organizations. If you ask most people in the NBA, Washington and Charlotte, very hard places to be, very hard places to play, just because of the culture and everything. We hope that the Charlotte Hornets are turning it around. You guys should go watch my Charlotte Hornets ideal offseason that I just did. But Brandon Miller, phenomenal rookie season. Very, very effective. He came in, he struggled with like getting to the hoop and finishing and stuff, which, like, look, everybody's got their thing, but man, this guy was shooting it the whole season. And by the end of the season, he was really like, yeah, no, I'm option 1A on this team. I'm that dude. I can go get you 20, 30 points in any night, and like, I'm going to hit some crazy shots while I do it. And he even started to create a little bit more. The stat I keep bringing up for why it was so impressive, how impressive he was, is the Charlotte Hornets were the #1 team in the NBA in isolations. And they have nobody that should be isolating. Like, nobody. They did more isolations than the Mavericks. Like, that's insane. That's absolutely crazy. So he's having to create everything by himself when he's not really a guy that should probably be a primary ball handler anyway. So all the credit in the world to Brandon Miller. A class for sure. All right, next one is Noah Clowney. Can we get, where's Dariq Whitehead? Let's move both of them up here, since the Nets had like back-to-back picks in the draft. I believe these guys were picked 20 and 21 respectively. I kind of want to be able to rank them in the same fashion. So obviously with first-round picks, you expect them to be able to contribute to some extent. It took Noah Clowney until kind of the end of the season to where he started to get going a little bit, and Dariq Whitehead dealt with a lot of injuries. And so it's kind of hard to evaluate him in that sense. But just talking about like Noah Clowney, you saw some good contributions late in the season. He's supposed to be a big man for them that's a little more versatile. You saw him put up like a 20-point game or two, a 10-point rebound game or two, had some games with some good blocks, but it took him a while to find his role in the team, and it didn't seem like he was able to really carve out his niche until a little bit earlier. And even then, like, he wasn't the most effective at points, but he just had moments where you saw the flashes. So for that season, I'm probably going to put him in D tier. He wasn't like Jaylen Hood-Schifino, but he did have some interesting moments, but it wasn't like ever conducive to anything. And so that's where I struggle a little bit more. Whereas Dariq Whitehead kind of falls into this not enough info. Like, he only really played in, I think, 2 games this season, and he was just hurt for most of the year. So I just can't really rate him based on that. Next one, Olivier Maxence Prosper, the Marquette guy. I believe he's out of Marquette. Only played about 8-9 minutes a game this year. Kind of just came in when needed, was a reserve guy for them this season, but showed some things for sure. Showed some really good athleticism, showed some good poise at points in the season. I liked his toughness. I liked his defensive switchability. I thought that was all good. He just isn't really able to contribute much on the offensive side of the ball right now. I do think that he's somebody that, given a little bit more time and growth, like, he is a little bit older for a rookie, but at the end of the day, like, there's a lot of like raw ability there in his size, weight, and like athleticism that I'm like, okay, like, this guy should be able to become like a decent wing for the Dallas Mavericks at some point, and they're usually pretty good at developing talent, so I'd like to think that he'd go somewhere. But considering the fact he was a first round pick and his actual level of production and everything, do I want to put him in like the D tier? Because he's probably like the same as like a Noah Clowney, right? So like, it's not like he had like a bad rookie season. I'm not saying either of these guys really did. It's just like, considering they were first round picks and they couldn't really crack the rotation, like, just kind of is what it is. I'm really glad that these two guys are right next to each other. Taylor Hendricks and Jarris Walker. Two lottery picks that had very similar first seasons in the NBA, if you will. Both of them power forwards, supposed to be pretty athletic, pretty good defensively, but neither of them could find the court at all this season. Even just spending a ton of time in the G League is like lottery picks. We started to see a little bit out of Taylor Hendricks at the end of the season. For that alone, I can throw him in the D tier at least. It's a little bit shocking that he couldn't find his way onto the court a little bit earlier. I thought it was weird that they picked him even to start with, just because of like who they already had on the roster and like the marketing Kelly Olynyk, Walker Kessler thing that they had going on. But even still, like, it wasn't like great, and I have a hard time even putting him in D, but we did just see a little bit from him at the end of the season when they did open up some rotation minutes. I think primarily to be like, okay, we got to throw him on the court and see something. For Jarris Walker, man, I think it's an F. Like, you couldn't get on the court. Like, they just didn't trust you at all to get on the court. And like, yes, they've got other guys that are solid at that position, but I wouldn't say it's like lockdown to where you couldn't beat Isaiah Jackson or Jaylen Smith to get some of these backup big minutes. So yeah, those two really, really weird picks. Not sure what they're going to do with them going forward. I have to do my Indiana Pacers ideal offseason soon. And like, they're going to be bringing like Obi Toppin back and guys like that. So I don't know where Jarris Walker fits into things going forward. Next guy up is Jet Howard, son of Juwan Howard. Lottery pick for the Orlando Magic. I was pretty confused with both of their picks this year. Like, I'm not saying I like or dislike either of them. I was just like, what are you guys really doing with these picks? I feel like there's better suited guys for your team than this right now. I didn't really understand the Jet Howard pick. I didn't. I wasn't a huge Jet Howard fan even coming in, but I was a little bit confused by the pick, and he really didn't have a very good season. He's supposed to come in and be not a defensive wing, an offensive wing that can shoot, that can play make a little bit. He was never a very good like creator off the dribble or anything like that, and that's tough for a wing coming into the NBA. That's a lot to ask out of someone, but couldn't really contribute defensively much at all. I know Orlando Magic fans are like, this guy can shoot and he can do this. Well, like, he didn't this year. Like, we hope that he can shoot, but man, like, in his few minutes, and it's hard when you're a shooter and you're not getting consistent minutes to get in, but they needed shooting on this team this year. They know that they needed shooting. If he could have shot this year, he would have been in the game. So sorry, y'all. Jet Howard falls into the F tier for this. So a couple lottery picks falling in there. That kind of sucks. But, you know, it happens like that every year. Cason Wallace. I love Cason Wallace. It's hard being an NBA point guard, like we talked about before. But Cason Wallace was able to come in to a good Oklahoma City Thunder team, a young Oklahoma City Thunder team at that. So, like, how many vets do you really have helping you out at that point? And he was able to come in and just look like he's been in the NBA for like 10 seasons already. He came in, he played phenomenal defense, he shot the ball well, he was a playmaker when he needed to be. He was like, okay, if you need me to be a point guard, I can go be a point guard. If I need to be off ball, I can be off ball. But man, his defense, especially like just getting hand on ball when people drive, and it didn't matter who it was, like what level of NBA player they were, his defensive impact was felt each and every time. I'm putting Cason Wallace in the A right now. Like, I know he didn't play as high of a role or anything, but man, he was a super contributor, even if it didn't show up on the stat sheet. Loved Cason Wallace this season. Oh, the boy Scoot Henderson. I love Scoot Henderson, man. I do. I really like his style and his play and his ability. It was tough for him this year, and I don't want to be like a Scoot apologist either, because like at the end of the day, you got to hold him accountable. He just was not a shot maker, but he didn't come in like we didn't look at Scoot Henderson. We're like, yeah, this guy's gonna hit like jump shots or whatever right away. Like, we knew that's what he had to work on or whatever, but what makes me upset is that when teams take these guys with these high draft picks, right, especially like a point guard, and you don't put them in situations that at least like make some sense. The Portland Trailblazers roster made no sense this year to help Scoot Henderson. Like, his bigs were always in the way. He didn't have spacing on the wings or whatever. He's having to share the ball with all these other guards on the team that want the ball and need the ball. So I just feel bad for him in that sense. He totally had some better minutes towards the end of the year. And if there's something that we can look forward to, he was one of the best pick and roll players in basketball this year. Like, he's really good at reading that. His stop and go is really awesome. Like, obviously when he gets out in transition, he's lethal. Can we just get him like some run, jump, and dunk guys himself and like a nice pick and roll guy to play with? Because DeAndre Ayton is not it. Like, we need to get DeAndre Ayton away from Scoot Henderson. I really would love to get like a Donovan Clingan or something next to him. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think it'd be a really, really cool thing. I think Scoot Henderson belongs in the C tier. Like, that's probably where I'd rank him because he did have some really good moments for the team, and he had a really tough assignment this year, but that's where I'd put Scoot Henderson. We're just going to move this guy up here. Yeah, Wemby might be the best player in the NBA by the end of, like, next season or the season after that, so... yeah, that's Victor Wembanyama for you. Marcus Sasser. Marcus Sasser was interesting. Another guy that, like, the Pistons just kind of didn't play for some reason. So here's my thing with the Pistons this year, right? Their coach, Monty Williams. I know that people are coming for his head and everything. I've like had connections with Monty Williams. He's a really good basketball coach, like a really good basketball coach, and an even better leader. His rotations made no sense this year. I just can't comprehend that he would do this. Like, I feel like somebody's holding a gun to Monty Williams and telling him, you need to play James Wiseman, you need to play Killian Hayes, you need to play Isaiah Stewart this many minutes. It didn't make any sense. Like, there's no reason that Sasser and like Ausar Thompson shouldn't have been or should have been getting minutes. Like, why was Jaden Ivey on the bench? Doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know, but Marcus Sasser, in the limited minutes that he played this year, very, very, very effective. I really think that he's a guy that they should be continuing to explore. I want to throw him in the B tier for now. I think that's where he belongs. I hope that he gets a chance to shine. All right, next we got Kobe Buffkin, like a mid-first round pick by Atlanta. Obviously, he's coming into a situation where there was enough point guards on the team to where he wasn't going to get a ton of minutes. In his limited time, was not very effective. But again, we can blame that partially on there just wasn't a good role for him. Obviously, when Trey went down for points, he came in and he played like some solid minutes where he at least wasn't like ruining anything, but he wasn't really effective on the offensive end. So for that reason alone, I'm probably giving him a D. And like, it's not his fault he got drafted into a situation that just made no sense for them to pick him in that spot. But, you know, he wasn't able to really contribute all that much in the minutes that he had. But we give him credit that he was able to come in and at least not be like a negative for points of the season. Brandon Podziemski, I don't know how to say his name, man. I just don't. We call him Pods. That's just what that's what he is, man. I guarantee you, if I told y'all my last name, you wouldn't be able to say it either. That's why the channel's name is what it is, right? But Pods. Really, really impressed by him. I just hadn't seen a ton of film on him in college, just being honest with you. He was an under the radar guy for me and for a lot of other people. And that's why when he found himself on the Warriors, because he was underrated, he was able to thrive because he's a smart basketball player. He's very controlled in his movements. And the Warriors, they love guys like that, right? He was able to play good defense. He was able to push the ball for them, was still a valuable shooter for them at points in the season. I thought Pods just had a phenomenal rookie campaign. I was really, really happy with his performance. All said and done, being able to come into a team with so many strong vets on the team and playing the guard role and just carving out a spot for yourself, like Pods, A season. Absolutely awesome. Can't wait to see more of him. Ben Shepherd, a guy that I really didn't like come in and start watching until the playoffs. Like, I'm going to be honest with you, I just hadn't seen a ton of him. I was really, really impressed with Ben Shepherd in these playoffs. And here's the biggest reason why. I know the scoring isn't quite there yet or anything. I love his intensity, and I love that he's obviously thinking about the game and really, really smart. He didn't force anything when he was on the court. He came out there and did his job every single night. Like, if he had an open shot, he took it, and if he didn't, he was like, let me get the ball back to one of my stars, right? That guy is going to be a really good NBA role player at one point, and I can't wait to see his continued development. He got so much experience this year. We're going to throw Ben Shepherd in the B tier for now. Next one, Nick Smith Jr., a guy that I wasn't very high on, and I'm still not too high on. I see Nick Smith Jr. as one of those kind of modern NBA players that's coming into basketball that just doesn't really know much about basketball, if you will. They're really talented, very athletic. They can make some cool shots, but they just don't see the game really well. And I think that's why you kind of looked at him in points and you saw like some of these big turnover games and things like that. But I have to give him credit. I mean, the dude shot like 40-something% from three this year on pretty good attempts. He got in like 50-some games this year, partially because LaMelo was hurt. But still, he came in, he contributed a decent amount, and there's at least some potential there for him. So for that alone, like, I'm going to give him a C. And the reason I'm giving him a C is because I don't think he really contributed to winning, but he played better than I think where, like, because he was drafted at the end of the first round. So, like, you don't expect, like, a guy at the end of the first round to come in and give you 6-7 points a game and shoot effectively from the field. So for that alone, we got to give him credit. I'm curious to see his development going forward. Like I said, I'm not particularly high on him, but, like, guys prove me wrong or right all the time. So I hope that he's able to prove me wrong. All right, Chris Murray, the brother of Keegan Murray. Obviously kind of like a back half first round pick for the Trailblazers. I wish that we would have seen a more effective Chris Murray this year because he wasn't very efficient. We definitely saw some things like we see in Keegan where we're like, yep, he's got good movements, he's got good mechanics and everything. Strong, well-kept person, meaning like he's very controlled on the court. That's all awesome, right? But overall, like the buckets weren't falling, right? And there was an opportunity for him to get on the court because they needed spacing like at the wing and at the forward spot. So for that alone, I probably got to throw Chris Murray in like, is it a D tier? No, because like he was still like on the court and like, or I was going to say F, like he's not an F like these guys. It's just like he wasn't effective in his first season. I also want to point out, I don't like freak out about rookie effectiveness ever, and that's at least with like development and stuff like that. Like I always say, you can't judge a player's like efficiency until like the end of their second season. That's when I want to start to see like you at least recognizing your mistakes and starting to correct some of those mistakes before they happen. Like you're like, oh, I'm not going to do this time because of XYZ, right? So that's my thought with that. Chris Murray probably in the D tier. Bryce Sensabaugh, a really interesting young player for the Utah Jazz. They had a vast like spread of like rookie performances this year, didn't they? And it was very random based on where they actually like picked him. But an interesting wing for them. Wasn't the most effective offensive player for them, but played pretty solid defense. Was actually a quietly good playmaker for them at points too. But limited minutes. Got to start towards the end of the season because they had like no wings on their team at that point. I think for that alone, we got to give Sensabaugh a C because he was able to come in and contribute to a decent NBA team. Like the Jazz aren't good by any means, but they're decent. So for that alone, we got to give him some credit. The Jazz believed in him more than like Taylor Hendricks at points in the season. So that should say something in itself. Julian Strawther, a really interesting player for the Nuggets. I'm probably just using interesting, that word a bit too much, but I find players interesting. The young players are always interesting to me. Julian Strawther was a guy that didn't get a ton of burn this year, but when he did, he started to show some things offensively, and you're like, okay, maybe this guy can be a bit of a ball handler for them. Maybe he can create some things for him. Like, he had a little streak there where he was like, okay, like we're seeing a couple double-digit games in a row. Okay, so he's going to be a project for them. You're probably going to throw him in the C tier for now just because, like, yep, he was drafted at the end of the first round. He had a couple moments. He still wasn't like a big contributor. Obviously wasn't in the playoff rotation or anything like that. So it's like, okay, let's hope to see him grow. Andre Jackson Jr., I wish he would have gotten more playing time. He got a lot of playing time early in the season, looked really, really good for them as a defender and a guy that can shoot a little bit, just a huge energy guy, a great athlete. I was a fan of his in college. I thought he was a first-round talent. Obviously, people disagreed, and I think that he showed that he should have been for the most part. And then Doc Rivers came in and decided, I'm not going to play Andre Jackson Jr. anymore. And then in the playoffs, he actually did play him a little bit, and he was pretty effective. So I hope that the Bucks realize what they have in him. I think he's a really nice contributing piece for him, and I can't wait to see the rest of his career. Where do I put him? If I put Ben Shepherd here, I feel like I have to put Andre Jackson Jr. in the B tier, so that's where I'm going to put him. Rayan Rupert, I don't know how to say the name, man. Names are hard. English is hard. I don't even know if it's an English name. But anyway, Rupert, rookie season, not a ton of like sample size to go off of, which, you know, isn't the worst thing in the world. He wasn't a high draft pick by any means, but was able to come in and be a decent shooter for them on the wing and a decent defender. Like, I wish I had more to say about him, but there's just not a ton to look at for it. But in the limited minutes, I thought he was interesting enough. Is he worth exploring for them? It depends on who else they're trying to bring into the roster. But at the very least, I feel like I should give him like a C tier because in the few minutes that he got here and there, he was able to not be like bad in essence. Like he was like fine. So we'll take that. GG Jackson is an absolute A. GG Jackson is such an underrated player. I don't know why people don't talk about him more. He was my my hidden gem, if you will, when I was filling out like draft reports and stuff for teams this last season. I was like, GG Jackson is a guy you should take. Like, I think he's top 10 pick value. I think he's that good. There's too many skills and natural abilities that he has. His movements are too fluid. You need to take this player. And most people didn't give me any credit for that. And that's mostly because I said Chet wasn't going to be good. But that's just me. I didn't say Chet wasn't going to be good. I just said that Chet, I don't think he's going to be that good. I think he'll be okay. I didn't think he was going to be like a starter level player. And that's, you know what, we all get things wrong every once in a while. But yeah, no, GG Jackson was phenomenal this season. He can do like everything. Good defender, good shooter, great athlete, can put the ball on the floor a little bit, can play make a little bit. He took over plenty of games for them. The Grizzlies really found something this year. Like, obviously, they had such a weird season. He was able to carve out a role for himself. Phenomenal season. Can't wait to watch more Gigi Jackson. I think he could really become something in this league. I'm realizing now there's a second Derek Lively. I don't know why that is, but you know what? Derek Lively's so good that he gets to be in there twice. That's how important he is. So shout out Derek Lively. The last two, Tamani Kamara was a guy that was a pretty late draft pick for the Portland Trailblazers. I believe he came over in the Suns trade. I believe so. And he came in and played a decent amount of starter minutes for them. I know a lot of Blazers fans really like him, and I like his game as well. He doesn't show a ton offensively yet, and that's okay. He was a really good defender. He was a really smart player. I was really happy with Kamara. I'm going to put him in the B tier for that reason. Hope that he gets some more chances to develop. And then we'll finish off with Jaime Jaquez Jr. Like any Heat player, he just comes in and looks like a pro right away. Looks like a 10-year vet and everything. Some of his moves are so refined and look so good already. We hope that he can start to contribute from three a little bit more. And his role changed so much throughout the season, man. So you got to give him all the credit in the world for that. That's a really tough thing to try and manage, and I just want to give all the credit in the world to Jaime Jaquez. Phenomenal season. You go into the A class. And there we have it, y'all. That's our tier list for this season, the end of the year tier list. Woo, yeah, so exciting, right? You guys let me know what you think. If you guys think I rated somebody too high, too low. I mean, this is how tier lists are supposed to look, right? They're supposed to be heavier towards the middle, so that's cool at the end of the day. I hope you guys found it interesting. I know everybody likes watching the rookies develop and everything. Again, I'll say I think that all of these guys have potential. There's a reason that they're here at the end of the day, and I hope that they all succeed. But for now, this is where I thought they performed in terms of their rookie season. Can't wait to see them next year, and can't wait to talk about this next batch of rookies, y'all. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to y'all later.